Merry Christmas, one and all! At least, it's Christmas if you're watching this episode on the day it's released. It's not actually Christmas on the day I'm recording this. And if you're watching this on any day other than Christmas, it obviously won't. I'll shut up now. We're on the third issue of our 4-issue Sonic the Hedgehog miniseries, and so far it's been a pretty lightweight ride. Nothing's exactly blown my mind in the past 2 issues, but it hasn't been terrible either. No, not even the main story of Sonic Miniseries number 1. However, we've mostly been dealing with short, unconnected adventures with no real arc to any of them. This all changes with today's comic, however. For the third part of this 4-part miniseries, and for Scott Shaw's last comic before Sonic In Your Face, and before you ask, no, I don't know why Scott Shaw draws for only 3 of the 4 issues in the miniseries, we have a full-fledged adventure. That's right, an adventure written by the man who wrote the Elf comics. You take your small blessings when you can find them. With that out of the way, let's look at Archie's Sonic the Hedgehog miniseries number 2. The cover is bland. Sonic is running away from a missile against a yellow background, with Zoom written behind Sonic. You know, while I didn't appreciate the cover of issue number 0, at least it had stuff happening on the cover. Sonic running out of the TV with Robotnik chasing him, while not the best cover in the world, still gave the basic idea that this was a video game escaping the TV and jumping onto a comic book page. This is just boring, plain and simple. Oh, and I failed to mention this for the last 2 issues, but there's been a tiny image in the box in the top left corner of the cover. None of them were particularly noteworthy, hence why I haven't mentioned them until now. But God almighty, this is a bad one. Shaw clearly isn't that grand at drawing Sonic's head directly from the front. To be fair, I'm sure the way the spines are on his back would make it difficult to really capture Sonic if he drew his face from the front, but still. Before we get into the comic proper, I wanted to point out this little box tucked away in the corner near the credits on the first page, declaring this to be a book-length classic. It's a little early to be calling this a classic, isn't it? For that matter, unless that's supposed to be short for a comic book-length classic, I don't think that exactly fits considering how many pages are in a regular comic book. You need to have at least 50 pages to be considered a novella after all. But whatever, I'm stalling again. We truly open to Princess Sally calling for Sonic the Hedgehog from the magical throne room. I call it magical because across the panels on this and the next page, the window into the throne room constantly shifts position and changes how high it is. Master of perspective, Shaw ain't. Anyway, when Sonic hears Princess Sally call out to him, he decides to try out a new trick. By moving at twice the speed of sound, I can arrive before the words leave her lips. Physics? What's that? Seriously though, this falls apart immediately when you start thinking about it. Even assuming Sonic can hit Mach 2, a belief I personally hold, but I can see arguments either way. How did Sonic arrive at his destination before Sally finished speaking? He had to have heard her cry out first, so unless he traveled back in time... Oh wait, Sonic can travel faster than the speed of light. Thus, it's entirely possible that he did travel back in time. Granted, he'd have to be moving a lot faster than Mach 2 to pull this off, but maybe Gallagher knew what he was doing when he introduced the idea that Sonic could travel faster than the speed of light in Sonic Miniseries number 0. Or, you know, maybe it's just a stupid joke and I'm thinking about it way too hard. My money's on that one. Sonic, I have something important to tell you. You mean the reason why you changed from a blonde to a brunette? Heh. Cute. Still doesn't explain the color of her skin, though. We're not there yet! Sally briefly wonders if Sonic likes her better as a brunette, while Sonic thinks to himself that he loves her hair dark. You know, I was about to make a joke about, who the Veronica in this Archie and Bay relationship is. But knowing what's going to come up later in the comic's history, that question becomes really funny. Also, question about the throne room. Is there a door that goes into this room, or do you really have to climb in and out through a rope into the window? Well, spoilers, but to my memory, we never see this throne room again, so it really doesn't matter in the long run. Actually, I have a theory on why you can only enter or exit the room through a rope in the window, but I'll save that thought until Sonic Super Special number 5. Anyway, Sally explains that the box she threw down to Sonic 2 panels ago is a container for the Crown of the Acorn Kings, a magical artifact that the old King Acorn once wore. What really makes this crown powerful, however, is the existence of the 4 Freedom Emeralds. Yes, the 4 Freedom Emeralds, the mystical gems that sit atop the crown. Their power is awesome. I'll say, the Freedom Emerald's magic is what keeps Robotnik's reign of terror at bay.
I have several questions.
1. Freedom Emeralds? What happened to Chaos Emeralds? This comic was released in January of 1993. I can understand the creators not having enough time between the release of this issue and the release of Sonic 2 to account for the Chaos Emeralds being a thing, because, it takes a really long time to make comic books. Except the original Sonic the Hedgehog, which also had Chaos Emeralds, was released back in June of 1991. That's more than enough time for them to incorporate the Chaos Emeralds into the comic, as they were a very real thing that existed in the game. 2. So you mean to tell me that Sally had this awesome power at her bedside this whole time, and she only now decided to try use it? You guys are at war. Robotic is not going to stop until you are all either killed or roboticized. The entire planet is decimated, and you very well may be the last haven of safety left in the world as far as we know. If you have something you can use to your advantage, use it! 3. Seriously, Freedom Emeralds? 4. Sonic mentions that the Emerald's power is what's keeping Robotnik's reign of terror at bay. Already, things aren't looking so good for you guys, what with the rampant pollution all over the place and nearly everyone you know and love either dead or enslaved. So even in this crappy situation, you've kept afloat by these emeralds. And based on Sonic's reaction, the existence of this mythical artifact is common knowledge. This makes their lack of using the crown or the emeralds make even less sense. So you mean to tell me that they had this mystical artifact that's been keeping their enemy at bay, they know is keeping their enemy at bay, and only now are they thinking, gee whiz, that mystical and all-powerful artifact we've been using to protect ourselves against Robotnik may actually be useful if we use it against Robotnik. 5. No, I'm not going to get over this. Freedom Emeralds are a stupid concept. In fact, they're so stupid that we're never going to hear about them again after this issue. We will see the Crown of Acorns come back, however, although the location of the crown as well as its existence will raise even more questions, but we'll get to that. What's worth noting is that in the next panel, we see the Royal Guard who's in charge of protecting the crown and the Freedom Emeralds, led by Antoine. The fact that there exists a Royal Guard in the first place proves that there are more than just 5 people who live in Knothole, even if it's just a small guard unit. Though that does make one question. If we have a Royal Guard, do we have more citizens in Knothole to protect as well? Keep that thought squirreled away for another few issues. Sally is ready for a coronation. In the hallway with only Sonic to crown her and nobody except maybe Antoine and the Royal Guard watching. But props for cutting to the chase and wanting to get that crown on your head. Only when Sonic opens the chest, the crown is missing! Wait, if the crown's missing, then why did Sonic react to the box as if it was super heavy a couple panels ago? Maybe it's just a naturally heavy chest or something. Maybe. I guess. Gone? Oh no. Impossible! I personally trained each of the Royal Guards. That explains a lot. Are you saying I'm incompetent? No, Gallagher is. I feel your pain, Antoine. Also, yeesh, check out Sally's face in this panel. Apparently she's so frustrated with Antoine and Sonic snapping at each other, her face is melting. I don't know who's at fault here. Scott Shaw, the inker, or maybe the colorist. Either way, it really doesn't look good at all. The group comes to the conclusion that one of the Royal Guards must actually be a robot spy sent by Robotnik in order to steal both the crown and the Freedom Emeralds. And considering how powerful and important these objects are, to the point Sally outright states that if Robotnik had his hands on them, the entirety of Mobius is doomed, I'm shocked it took Robotnik this long in order to pull the stunt. I'd also question how Robotnik could pull off sending in a robot spy like that, since he wouldn't have the technology to pull off the stunt until the Princess Sally miniseries, and if he did, I don't understand why he wouldn't use a spy to find Knothole's location, but I've already made way too many references to future events as is, and like I said, I'm trying to keep in chronological order here. Sonic runs in circles to burn the rubber off the soles of his shoes, generating smoke to set off the smoke detectors. Wait a second, didn't Uncle Chuck specifically say back in issue number 0 that he built Sonic's shoes to be extra durable to his speed? Unless Sonic was dragging his feet specifically in order to burn the rubber off his shoes. Also, Boomer installed smoke detectors and a sprinkler system in an underground cavern system? I mean, I don't doubt it's necessary, especially seeing as they're underground and a fire would be devastating, but it must have been hell to install that in the clearly rocky and uneven ceilings this panel shows. Also, why wouldn't Robotnik have waterproofed his robots by now? We saw just last issue that Robotnik is clearly capable of at least waterproofing his aquatic badniks as well as the underwater robot maker. Either Robotnik is only capable of waterproofing machines specifically designed to go underwater, he felt he didn't need to waterproof a spy robot, or he's just an idiot. I think I'll subscribe to the later theory. So yeah, it turns out that the pig is the mole, or the robot, spy, whatever, and the guards hold him down for interrogation. I was going to point out how odd it is that the pig just turned purple all of a sudden and chalk it up to a coloring error, but to be fair, we're later told he initiated his self-destruct sequence and he remains consistently purple afterwards, so more likely he's overheating or just turning purple to show he's about to blow. So, credit where credit is due. The robot reveals he gave the Freedom Emeralds to Dr. Robotnik, and Robotnik in turn scattered them across the world. Why in God's name would you do that? These emeralds contain great power and you just scatter them? You could have used them against the freedom fighters. Or, you could plug them into some doomsday weapon and blow them all to hell. What possible, logical reason would you have of scattering them around the planet rather than just using them for yourself? Well, putting that behind us for a moment, the bad news keeps on rolling. Seeing as Robotnik had a spy in their midst, he most certainly knows where Knothole is now, and Sonic says the robot's about to self-destruct. How did Sonic know that? Is he like a min-maxed character? He can't tell the difference between robots and Mobians, and in return, he can tell when someone's about to self-destruct? Note to self, keep that in mind for next Cyberpunk campaign. Sonic carries the robot out of Knothole, only for an explosion to happen off-panel. Oh no! What happened to Sonic? Did he get rid of the robot in time? Is he dead? No, of course he's not. We're only 6 pages into the story, for crying out loud. We get a cute moment on the next page where Sally is mourning Sonic's apparent death, regretting that she never told him how she loved him. Only for Sonic to come in totally unharmed and smugly ask to hear what Sally had to say. Say what you will about Gallagher, his Sonic and Sally moments are really cute. I would say I ship it, but I don't exactly feel like being hunted down and beaten to death on Christmas of all days. Upon questioning, Sonic explains that he just went fast in order to dump the robot off before he blew up. I'd say no duh, but after being reminded how twisty and overly complex the slide is, I find myself commending Sonic for being able to run that quickly up the slide without breaking something. Antoine reminds the group that they need to act quickly and retrieve the Freedom Emeralds or all will be lost. Even though Robotnik already knows where Knothole is. He sent a spy down there and everything, and they even mentioned earlier in the comic that Robotnik must know where they are. Doesn't that mean you guys have already lost? I mean, not to be a downer, but wasn't this always the biggest concern for you guys? If Robotnik ever figured out where Knothole was, it's basically game over. And now that he knows where it is, even if you find and retrieve all the Freedom Emeralds, the final safe haven on the planet has been compromised. Well, I guess that's just a problem we're not supposed to think about right now, because Sonic's telling us about a blimp in the sky being guarded by buzz bombers and bat brains. I'd question the purpose of slapping a giant fake mustache at the end of your blimp, but hey, an evil villain has to be self-absorbed. That's like a rule or something. Although I will admit that seeing the giant mustache tagged at the end of the blimp makes it look less intimidating and more downright silly. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, this is a topic I've wanted to talk about for a while now. Remember back in the miniseries number 0 episode where I said they took elements from both SatAM and Adventures when writing this comic? Well, it seems like this that makes the problem that holds extremely apparent. In SatAM, Robotnik basically won. He ruled the world with an iron fist, and everyone was either dead, turned into robots, or in hiding. There was no safe haven save the very few the Freedom Fighters created, and even then, they had to fight tooth and nail to preserve it. It was a constant war between the Freedom Fighters and Robotnik, with the Freedom Fighters struggling for even the smallest of victories against Robotnik because that's all they had to hold on to. In Adventures, meanwhile, Robotnik was evil and had his own lair, yes, but he was also, well...
Oh, it's from the show! It's from the show! From the show! Oh, it's from the show! It's from the show! From the show! I'm gonna be on TV! I'm gonna be a TV star! I'm gonna be on TV!
The show as a whole was definitely aimed at younger children, and as such, painted Robotnik out to be evil, but cartoonishly so. He's a huge buffoon, basically. So when you take these two contrasting styles and try to mix them together, you end up with a story where the planet has been conquered by a cartoonishly evil oaf who slaps his mustache on blimps because, why not? The contrast creates a strange scenario in which we don't know if we're supposed to take Robotnik seriously or not, and that's a very bad thing for a story unless the contrast between the evil actions and their own personality is the crux of the story. And trust me, that's not what they're going for here. As the series goes on, they'll slowly have Robotnik transform into his Sad AM version as he becomes a more overt threat over time, with the full transformation from a cartoonishly evil buffoon into a legitimate threat happening when we get into the pre-Endgame era of the series. But I'll talk more about that, as well as the different eras the comic can be divided into, when we get into the main series as Sonic the Hedgehog number 17. Anyway, back to the actual comic, they reason that the blimp is carrying away the Freedom Emeralds, and so Sally assigns both Sonic and Antoine to take Robotnik on because it's too big of a job for just one person. And look, don't get me wrong, I love Antoine, I just think that he's being written very poorly in this early stage of the comic, but in the context of the world that we've seen so far, why would you pair up Antoine with Sonic? Wouldn't it make more sense to have Sonic team up with Boomer? As far as we've seen, Antoine is a clumsy oaf whose only real marked skill that we've seen demonstrated is his ability to pickpocket. Boomer, meanwhile, is a skilled mechanic as we've seen in miniseries number 1 and is more than capable of holding his own against Robotnik. The only reason that I could think as to why they would pair these two characters up would be to exploit the comedic opportunities it would provide, and I just answered my own question, didn't I? Right, moving on. They quickly inflate the hot air balloon to pursue Robotnik by asking Antoine to tell me about his college days. Ignoring for the moment Gallagher using Antoine as a joke to fill the balloon with hot air, This brings up an interesting point. Antoine went to college? Up until now, I had always assumed the Framefires were children, or at the very least early to mid-teens, with Boomer being the only possible exception as either a late teen or an early adult. So, does this mean that Antoine is at least 18 years old? Probably over if he's talking about his freshman dance. Keep this information in mind as we continue the series. Spoilers, it gets creepy! The balloon approaches the blimp, only for the duo to be spotted by the buzz bombers and their balloon popped. I'm tempted to bring up the fact that hot air balloons are constructive ripstop nylon, which are designed and reinforced to be highly resistant to tearing and literally impossible to pop, and the best the buzz bomber could have accomplished would be to tear a hole that would cause a balloon to slowly deflate. But for once, I'll just chalk this up to cartoon logic and leave it alone. I know, a surprising revelation coming from me. Please, do try and contain your shock. Antoine bails out with his parachute and suggests Sonic does the same, but instead, Sonic pulls a classic Genesis move and bounces from badnik to badnik to reach the hot air balloon and pop it before catching Antoine on the way down. What's good for the goose is worth taking a gander at. Wow, Gallagher, you must really love using foreign words and old obscure proverbs for jokes, don't you? They check the wreckage of the crash to find a broken SWAT bot in one of the 4 Freedom Emeralds. The broken remains of the SWAT bot, before it shuts down, reveals that Robotnik wanted the emeralds to be scattered between land, sea, air, and underground. Aha! That's his plan! To separate the gems so their magic can't affect his dream of a mechanical world! Or, he could combine them together and utilize their magic into an ultimate doomsday weapon to fully take over the world and destroy everyone that gets in his way. But hey, I'm sure separating the Freedom Emeralds makes much more sense than that. After all, if you keep them all separated, their power will only be at a fraction, making it so you can't exploit their power for your own evil purposes and thus give the heroes the opportunity to steal them back from you. Wait. Sonic tells Antoine to take the emeralds back to Sally before taking off to hunt the other emeralds, with the only clues being that they'll be somewhere in land, sea, and underground. Well, that should only narrow it down to the entire planet. Also, I just realized something. If Robotnik's plan was to keep the emeralds separated so they can never be a threat to him rather than outright weaponizing them, does this mean he was planning on keeping that blimp in the air forever? There's a laundry list of reasons why that could never work, but this episode's going long as is, and you probably don't want to hear me keep nitpicking like this. The comic takes a break from the main story to give us the top 10 reasons why Sonic the Hedgehog is the coolest comic around. I'll admit it's cute and it got a smirk out of me, but my favorite parts of this gag are the jabs against the practices of the comic industry at the time. Remember, this was written in the early 90s, where things for the comic industry as a whole were looking their grimmest. Say what you will about early Sonic comics, or even Archie in general, you can't deny that they're comfortable doing their own thing and won't try to bend to what's popular at the time. I'm going to have serious egg on my face if I find out that Archie actually was doing some of this 90s crap with their other titles. Heading back to the main story, we rejoin Sonic as he rushes to a fishing hole. the last time I checked, a lake and the sea were two totally different things. And even assuming this is the coast of the ocean, the next page shows Sonic making a beeline for the same underwater cavern he was trapped in last month. While I understand the ocean is a big place and you need to start somewhere, Sonic seems convinced that the hiding place for the Sea Freedom Emerald is in the exact same location as where Robotnik set up the Jaws and the underwater robot maker, and there's no way he'd be stupid enough to put in the exact same I give up. But I'm getting ahead of myself. When Sonic jumps into the water, he somehow gets his foot tangled in Tails' fishing line, dragging him down with him. I'd question just how Sonic got his foot tangled in the fishing line like that and didn't notice until he was underwater, but I have a bigger problem coming up. And no, it's not that both Sonic and Tails are talking freely underwater without any effort on their part. I said my piece about that last episode. No. What really bugs me is this. Jaws. Who? Tails was with Boomer when they saved Sonic from the Jaws last issue. He saw the Badnik face to face. And even if you try to make the argument that, well, Tails saw it, but he didn't know its name, an argument I call BS on, because you can't tell me Sonic doesn't talk all the time about his tales of adventure to whoever would listen and would totally name drop all the Badniks. The way this is phrased implies that Tails knows nothing about the Jaws at all, not that he just doesn't know its name. Wouldn't a better way to phrase this be, so that's its name, or something? Or even, isn't that the same guy who attacked you last time? Those would both work in this situation, and they would work much better than how this is placed here. Anyway, after they find the Freedom Emerald on a pedestal lit up by spotlights instead of protected in some sort of cage or within a Badnik, the two have to think fast before the Jaws comes around and takes them both out. Fortunately, they Looney Tunes the Jaws by having Tails draw their images on the cave wall and letting the Jaws crash into it. Also, considering just how little time they must have had to pull this off, I'm going to declare Tails to be just as fast as Boomer, and both of them to be the true fastest things alive. So, 2 Freedom Emeralds down, 2 to go. Back on land, a SWAT bot is told to initiate Plan 426 before walking in place with apparently a short circuit. Seeing the SWAT bot carrying a Freedom Emerald exposed in his hand, Sonic goes in to take it.
It's a trap!
So yeah, the SWAT bot releases a trapdoor, dropping Sonic into an underground tunnel, with Sonic still holding on to the Freedom Emerald. Sure, why not at this point? When did this become an underground comic? I would make a crack about this being some sort of reference to the Sonic Underground show, but upon doing some research, I found out that that particular show wouldn't air on television until 1999. You win this round, Gallagher! A Burrowbot comes to take Sonic's Freedom Emerald, and with it, he now has 2 on his person. Yes, Robotnik, letting Sonic take the Freedom Emerald and then have the other Freedom Emerald come right to him was an absolute genius plan on your part. Even assuming Robotnik was egotistical enough to believe that one Burrowbot was enough to take out Sonic, why send the one who actually has the Freedom Emerald? Sends that Burrowbot to dig to the center of the earth and build another one to kill Sonic. If Robotnik's plan was to hide and separate all of the Freedom Emeralds to make sure they wouldn't be a threat to him, he's doing a pretty piss poor job at it. Also, another through spelled with a U for those of you at home keeping track. Sonic flees, knowing the Burrowbot is a huge threat. The Badnik bursts through the wall, ready to take on Sonic. Only for Sonic to spin the Badnik to scrap and take the Freedom Emerald without any effort on his part, making everything we just witnessed entirely pointless. I've been running through these catacombs for hours. I'm so exhausted, I don't know which way is up. It's that way. You know, the opposite direction from where your feet are. Actually, Sonic realizes this and decides to Sonic spin his way directly up, bursting from the ground and not hole right as Boomer is attaching the other Freedom Emeralds to the Crown of Acorns. Convenient! The final 2 Freedom Emeralds are added to the Crown of Acorns, and our issue ends with the crown resting on Princess Sally's head. She announces that she'll use this power to destroy Robotnik's machinery and restore the planet to the beauty it once held. Spoilers, she never does. And for that matter, we're at the end of the issue. Okay, we get a single page where Robotnik is complaining about how he only got a single appearance on a tiny screen, but that has nothing to do with the actual main story. And we never get any closure on the fact that Robotnik knows where Knothole is. No, I'm not letting this one go. They specifically mention that's a problem they're going to have earlier in this issue, and yet it's never brought up and never expanded upon again. What about the fact that Robotnik sent a robot spy to Knothole in the first place? Was that the only spy? Will he try the same stunt again? I guess, I don't know. Maybe Sally used the magic of the Crown of Acorns in order to seal away Robotnik's knowledge of where Knothole is at the cost of losing the Crown of Acorns into the Hall of Limbo. But what are the chances of that happening? Anyway, despite all of my complaining, this comic is a lot of fun for what it is. The ending is seriously rushed, the characters' decisions makes no sense, and there are so many plot holes that you get a flat tire if you try driving over this comic. But there's still a lot of heart put into the book. You get exactly what you imagine you would picking this comic up. Archie's idea of a full-length adventure starring Sonic and friends. Could it have been better? Of course it could be. Is it still just fine for what it is? Yeah, I'd say so. Next week, I'm welcoming the New Year's with Robotnik's Secret Origin! Except not really. You'll see.